All right, moving on now to other stories. Some key players in the Niger Delta region have been speaking on the recent spate of xenophobic attacks in South Africa. They described the threat as unfortunate following the federal government's failure to protect the rights of its citizens abroad. And TVC News' Edmond Awaje has the report.
Nigerians have expressed anger over the recent outbreak of xenophobic attacks on its citizens living in South Africa. The attacks sprung up last month with several businesses and properties of Nigerians looted and destroyed. This has not gone down well with Nigerians back home, prompting some militant groups in the Niger Delta region to issue threats of attacks on businesses owned by South Africa in the region.
I appreciate the fact that that kind of threat has gone forth, because South Africans need to also understand that they also have something to lose in Nigeria if care is not taken. And if they want to continue to do business in Nigeria and remain safe in Nigeria, they also have a responsibility to protect us.
So for militant group to have issued threats to South African government, it shows two things. One, that the government has not been up to task on its responsibilities to protect her citizens. And two, it means that the people, out of frustration, have resorted to self-help.
If South Africans continue to kill Africans because they came to their country to do businesses and they are prospering, and they perhaps are lazy, they don't want to work, they now hide under the fact that some people are carrying drugs, they are into drugs, and that is why they are carrying out xenophobic attack, because they are breaking their laws and all that. Are those citizens the constitution of the land? Are they the police? So why would citizens take laws into their hands and begin to fight against fellow human beings?
They want the federal government to take decisive steps towards putting a final stop to further attack on Nigerians living and doing business in South Africa.
The government needs to do something about it. They shouldn't continue to play that role of big brother at this point. At this point, they need to match words with action. At this point, they need to make sure that this does not happen again. If South Africans don't want us to come to their country, they also should stay away from Nigeria. We need to cross the line.
It's a clarion call on the government that the government must be seen as representing the people, so that we do not have or assume such responsibilities again. And two, the government over time, when it happened initially some years ago, the government was lukewarm. The government did not do anything.
As Nigerians wait patiently to see how the situation will be handled by government, analysts say a possible attack, if not checked, would have adverse effects on Nigeria's economy, because many Nigerians working in companies owned by South Africa would be affected. Edmond Awaje, TVC News, Port Harcourt.
And that's what we're looking at next, the xenophobic attacks against Nigerians and foreigners indeed in South Africa. And of course, now you have militants giving South African businesses a 30 days ultimatum. I'm sure it's less than that already to leave Nigeria. They've asked the Nigerian government to ask South African businesses to leave the country. Well, let's start this way. Article 5 of the UN Universal Declaration on Human Rights says, and I quote, "No one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman, and or degrading treatment." But it is not so for South Africa, as of course you know, over the last years or so, Nigerians and other foreigners have been soft targets in South Africa for various reasons. Well, joining us now is a public affairs analyst, Agba Jalingo, and he is also from the Niger Delta region.
Thank you so much.
It's good to have you on the show this morning.
So good to...
Yes, well, in that report, Edmond Awaje, who put that report together, said Nigerians are angry, you know, with what's happening to their countrymen in South Africa. Is the Nigerian government angry enough to ensure that Nigerians are safe anywhere and everywhere, including South Africa?
No, frankly speaking, if you ask me, it doesn't look like the government is angry enough, because this is not the first time this is happening, and the last time it happened, we cannot pinpoint any decisive action that our own government took to ensure that this sort of thing did not repeat itself again. And I want to believe as a citizen that it could just be part of the reason why some of these things are repeating themselves over and over again. Maybe the ordinary person in South Africa feels that there is nothing Nigeria will do. And of course, it's very clear that the state actors too are complicit, because we saw scenes, videotapes where even the police were standing and watching, and the violence was going on and they couldn't do anything about it. So it shows clearly that even some state actors are also complicit in this matter. And
with the complicity
of
state actors, using your own expression, the police and all of that, doesn't that give a totally different dimension to this whole xenophobic attack, that one would have thought it's just something that, you know, illeterates, uneducated people, the anger that they're taking out on fellow Africans, blaming them for their own misfortunes?
But clearly speaking, South Africa has a problem. It's not like there's other African countries do not have their own challenges, but this challenge with South Africa is very peculiar. And there is something that the nation needs to do something about very drastically. We cannot see any reason why all your neighbors, all over Africa, we knew when South Africa was in trouble, that hackneyed story, that overbeaten story about what the rest of Africa did to get them out of where they were. It will be very, very unexpected for these same people to turn their anger on these same people who fought to bring them out of what the whole world considered an anathema. Is quite peculiar. And then, if you extend it a little further, the country has collected so much land from the whites, redistributed it to the black people, and the same black people are selling the lands away back to the same whites from whom the government collected their land. So the black man in South Africa has a peculiar problem that may not be common with the rest of Africa, and that is something that the government needs to do something about very, very seriously.
What do you think that problem really is? Can you
it's a problem of complex. Maybe after their long years of apartheid, after their long years of degradation, they are finding it difficult to sex up their confidence to the level that will match the rest of Africa. And I think that their government needs to do something about that very, very quickly. You cannot pin it down to any other thing apart from complex. Why would you just wake up one morning and feel that the other man is a problem? Why wouldn't you hold your security agencies accountable for not being able to check crime? And then in any case, I don't think it is true that most of the crime that is committed in South Africa is committed by foreigners. Even their own statistics back home show very clearly that their own population, their own black population, is deeply involved in some of these things that are committed in their country. It's a transfer of aggression which is basically rooted in their inferiority complex, which I suspect is born out of their long years of emotional degradation.
And former President Olusegun Obasanjo has blamed the insincerity on the part of the South African government on what is happening now. Would you be on the same page with him?
I think I am on the same page with him.
Listening to statements from them, it doesn't seem that they're ready to tackle this issue.
I am on the same page with President Obasanjo. The South African government has been very, very insincere with the Nigerian government, particularly with respect to these issues. Even the last time, there is nothing up till now, like I said, nothing tangible that we can pinpoint that both the government of Nigeria and South Africa did to make sure that this thing does not repeat itself. But you see, I don't even want to look at the South African side. I would have expected the Nigerian government to step up the action, to up the ante and see how they can force the hand. Recently, we saw how Nigeria was calling on African Union, which is one of those things that Nigeria can do. There are several diplomatic channels that Nigeria can use to twist South Africa. Because after all, we are still the big brother. No matter how they want to look at this, I want to believe very sincerely that a lot of money that their companies are taking out of Nigeria, we don't get that same amount of money from South Africa.
We'll explore all of the things that the Nigerian government can do. When we come back from this break, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we're looking at the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and foreigners in South Africa. And not just that, more importantly, the militants in Nigeria are threatening. They're saying they're giving South African businesses 30 days to leave the country. Stay with us. Militants be taken seriously as they have asked the Nigerian government to order all South African businesses out of the country, and that's within 30 days. They include Niger Delta watchdogs, Niger Delta volunteers, Niger Delta strike force, and the rest of them. They have all come together and said, look, we're not going to sit down and just lay back and see our brothers and sisters killed and maimed in South Africa, all in the name of whatever. Agba Jalingo is right here in the studio. He's from the Niger Delta himself. Now, should these militants be taken seriously or not? I mean, this coming from them, one would have thought that the Nigerian government should be leading the charge as far as such actions is concerned?
I just had a brief laugh.
And I wonder why you laugh.
I was on this chair the last time and I told you that what we call militants in the Niger Delta today is pure criminality. And I'm not going to mince words about it. The last time, they don't know what they want. The last time is free Dasuki, free the other man. They don't even know what they want. If they react to the spur of the moment. That's why I said when groups come out, from the name Niger Delta Militants, you have an ideology, you have something you are fixated about. Now these ones, if tomorrow they hear that there was something at the border with Nigeria and Benin Republic, they will tell you that Benin Republic does not do this, they will do. So they're a confused set of people. I don't think that the Niger Delta militants have any role in diplomacy.
But they are Nigerians and they can suggest what Nigerian government should be doing.
South Africa is a sovereign nation.
Yes.
Nigeria is a sovereign nation.
Indeed.
We have criticized and condemned what is happening in South Africa. We have also said that our government has not done enough. And I think that what we need to do is to put more pressure on our government to respond effectively. If we want to resort to what the militants are talking about, then we are no different from those criminals on the streets in South Africa. If we have to resort to destroying things in Nigeria, for instance, then we are not different from the people we are criticizing. And I don't think that that is the route that any nation, any sane people, any civilized people should take. So I think that is bad. That's some bulldog. It's not something that should be spoken about anywhere. They have no rule in this matter. There's a lot our government can do. We can pressurize the government, like I said.
What kind of actions should
the government had earlier called on the African Union to intervene. I would expect
the same African Union that's been considered as a toothless bulldog.
Nigeria is actually, as far as ECOWAS and African Union is concerned, I think that if we call African Union a toothless bulldog, we are simply saying that Nigeria is not effective, just like ECOWAS. If Nigeria is able to show leadership, Nigeria is the leader of Africa, then we'll expect, just like people accuse America of manipulating the United Nations to impose sanctions on whoever they want, I think Nigeria can play that role in Africa. Nigeria can instigate and pressurize the African Union to stampede South Africa, to really tell the world what is happening in South Africa and how they intend and they plan to solve the problem. Nigeria can as well, they can expel the South African High Commissioner in Nigeria and of course shut down the Nigerian High Commission in South Africa. Those are diplomatic steps that can be taken to force South Africa to do certain things. There are also some trade deals that we can reverse. If we cannot reverse, we can suspend, we can put on hold, pending when South Africa is able to assure us that our citizens in their country can be secured. Those are some of the steps that we can take. There is a way Nigeria can officially get MTN and the rest of them to contribute to the peace process, to contribute to seeing how Nigeria and South Africa can resolve these things. But for some people, come to even think of it, 98%, if not more, of people that work in MTN, in ShopRite, they are all Nigerians, for God's sake. Every family wants to go and do something or the other, shopping or one or the other thing in ShopRite. They give us the best price.
But these are South African companies, about 120 or so of them in Nigeria.
Yes.
That are making profit and taking the profit out.
Yes.
And all of that. So you think if some kind of embargo was put on some of these businesses, that it will not directly affect South Africa and South Africans?
The militants are not talking about embargo. They say they are going to blow up their businesses. And I don't think that's an embargo. I support government can do that through the official route.
If they don't leave, of course, nobody's saying they should do that. But if they've given them a 30-day ultimatum.
Why should they leave? Are they the ones that attack people in South Africa? They weren't the ones. Every day, America and China are fighting at the political scene. But their trade deals, the trade business keeps increasing every day. We have not heard some Americans saying that because somebody is going through one thing in China, we are going to blow up something in the other side. That's crude language, and nobody should encourage that sort of thing. I think that we have gone past that. There are certain things that our government can do. And that's why I'm saying that we should pressurize our government to make sure that they do what is necessary to force South Africa to make sure that our citizens in that country are
some
secure.
people have made comments, some Nigerians have made comments like, look, it is the way you handle yourself, really, that the outside world will respect you in the first instance. That the Nigerian government itself has not demonstrated that care or concern for the average Nigerian citizen. So why should it really bother itself about what happens to Nigerians anywhere? About 150 or so Nigerians have been killed in South Africa in the last 5 years or so in these xenophobic attacks.
Frankly speaking, that is not a lie. Not just in South Africa, all across the world, if you have the experience of traveling, you find out that we are just on our own. Anytime you travel, our embassies can offer very little help to you anytime you are stranded anywhere in the world. And that's a minus, not just on this government, but on our history as a country. And I think that this government must try to see how they can correct all of that. It is a horrible thing that once you are out of this country, you can't get any help from your embassies anywhere in the world, not just in South Africa. But the South African issue, that particular case is becoming special because of the number of people that are dying. And I expect that by now, what Nigerians should be doing is to, like I said earlier on, pressurize our government to do what is necessary
I'm just
in South
wondering,
Africa.
yes, but this all seems vague. Pressurize the government to do the necessary thing.
Rather than
what are
planning
the
to bomb or blow up MTN and
what are the
ShopRite.
necessary things? I mean, yeah, we keep hearing, recall the Nigerian ambassador to South Africa and all of that. Is that enough to actually put a final end, a complete, end to these killings of Nigerians on the streets of South Africa?
If we ask the African Union to throw some sanctions at South Africa, we lobby the United Nations. Nigeria can do that. Lobby the United Nations to throw sanctions on South Africa. The fact that you start the process alone, one of their ministers for Interior, Mugaba, was already expressing some anger about the attempt by Nigeria to ask the EU to ask South Africa to intervene in the matter. Those are some of the steps. Already they're angry. Push a little further, push harder to make sure that you get across to the United Nations, the African Union, and several other intercontinental bilateral organizations that are doing business with South Africa to see how they can push them from all angles to do what is right. But I don't know of anywhere in a civilized world where people say, because you are doing this to my citizen, I'm going to blow up your businesses in my country. We have gone past that, and I sincerely would not subscribe to that.
So these are no longer days of
no. These are no longer days for that. I don't think that is the reason, because we have Nigerians all over the world, we have South Africans all over the world. It's a small village, and you just don't know. If you live in a glass house, you don't need to throw any stones.
All right, now last week we spoke with a Nigerian lecturer, Jendele Humbo, who is based in South Africa, and he shared his thoughts with us.
Became very visible and more vicious in 2008. Up to today, we've not seen a single South African convicted for perpetrating violence against an immigrant. Business in South Africa never gets attacked. It's only the poor on the poor. People who are trying to do informal businesses, who are trying to earn a living, whether they come from Ethiopia, Somalia, Mozambique, it doesn't matter. What's important for some of these people who perpetrate this act at times is to have access to their property, have access to their shops, and be able to take a few things out of there. And so if things continue the way they're going, and you begin to see instances of threats of reprisal attacks from immigrant populations, then we're beginning to see a recipe for chaos, which might not be helpful to either South Africa or any of the immigrants living in the country at the moment.
Obviously, reprisal attacks would be counterproductive, like you said, or in quoting Michelle Obama's words, when they go down, we go up, or when they go low, we go up. All right, maybe at this point I should bring in Foladele to, feel the pulse of Nigerians and find out what they're saying about all of this unfortunate incidents in South Africa.
Yeah, good morning,
Fola, morning to you.
Very sad to see you alone here this morning.
It's all right.
You're doing a good job. Good morning, Agba. Okay, so quite a lot of reactions online, so let's check out some of them. Article 2019 says, the earlier Nigerians stop patronizing MTN, DSTV, Stanbic Bank, ShopRite, and send them packing back to lazy South Africa, the better. Okay, next one here. Adekoya Jamiu says, I had since stopped subscribing on my MTN line, and now my DSTV as a protest against the hashtag xenophobia on foreigners in South Africa. Oluwadare Shegun says, we have enough militants to deal with South Africans in Nigeria and South Africa if the attack continues on Nigerians. Ms. Kazola says, so militants in Nigeria have called on the FG to order all South African-owned businesses out of the country within 30 days. Crazy man talk. Or Chris man talk, actually. And last one here from Idam Ebele, he says, I have a quick question. Will shutting down DSTV and MTN in Nigeria stop the xenophobia attacks in South Africa?
Very good question, too.
That's the same question
Very
I'm
good
asking.
question.
It's
I mean,
not
would
gonna,
we
it's not gonna
survive?
stop anything? And for God's sake, would you want anybody to shut down your MTN line? whether anybody is being killed in South Africa or not. That's not to say their lives are not important, but it will not solve.
Well,
the
as an individual, one could actually.
For instance, the occasions when
step.
the last time some workers protested against a company that manufactures a household, Chi Nigeria Limited, that they were not paying them, and somebody was shot dead. I decided to stop patronizing the company because they were directly involved. MTN did not send anybody to go and attack our brothers in South Africa. ShopRite did not. So that's transfer of aggression.
None of the South African
We must
businesses,
insist
let's
that
just
the
put it
Nigerian
that
government
way.
should insist that those who looted, those who attacked our people in South Africa must be brought to justice. Let them be tried in court and let us see how they are tried and brought to justice. I'm sure that will be a deterrence. If you like, destroy all the MTN masts in Nigeria, it's not going to stop those criminals that I saw there. Those are mean humans, those are animals.
And that is
going to
exactly
stop
what
them.
has not happened. They have not, the authorities in South Africa have not taken any Nigerian to court, whether for drug trafficking or for prostitution, including even things for like taking their women. The kind of reasons they are putting forward.
They're not strong enough.
It's just
Like I said, those attacks are not
ridiculous,
basically,
to say the least.
even if Nigerians in South Africa were criminals, it is not the role of mobs to go and pick them up from their houses, loot their shops and vandalize their
not in their
properties.
place.
I think that South Africa has a police force that can effectively deal with that. Like we do in Nigeria. It's not expected for mobs to go around hitting people and killing people. That's simply not a reason. I will expect that Nigeria as a sovereign state should tell Zuma that we need to see those who attacked our citizens brought to book. If not, A, B, C, D will be put on hold. That's what I expect. And if militants want to threaten anybody, they should threaten our government.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, they should threaten our government to do what they are supposed to do.
That's an interesting argument. All right. Thank you, Agba.
all right, Fola, thanks so much. Now you have this 8-man Senate delegation that went to South Africa. Of course, many Nigerians have been reacting, differently to that particular trip by Nigerian lawmakers to South Africa to speak to the parliament. But we'll look at that. I'll allow you to answer that when we come back from this short break. Stay with us. All right, our second big story this morning, the militants call or 30-day ultimatum to South African businesses to leave the country as a result of the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and, of course, foreigners in South Africa. Of course, there have been talks from different quarters. Some are saying, look, Nigeria should sever ties with South Africa. Of course, the Senate has said, no, that's not the way to go. You have the militants who are saying if South African business, if they don't leave in 30 days, then we'll take the laws into our own hands. Of course, some people are saying, look, reason has to prevail. Then you have Nigerian senators, about 8 of them, who have gone to South Africa to meet, well, maybe eyeball to eyeball with some South African parliamentarians to discuss the way forward and hopefully to proffer solutions to these xenophobic attacks on Nigerians. But many Nigerians are criticizing all of that. Agba Jalingo is our guest in the studio. You said, what a trip.
What a trip. I remember that they keep going on this kind of trip. The last time this thing happened, some people also went on that trip. The only thing we didn't get back was the feedback. They didn't tell us what they came back with, and up till now, the events are still repeating themselves. I think maybe those that went needed some time to go and do some holiday. The brother to the North Korean president was killed in Malaysia. 2 weeks down the line, the Malaysian government expelled the ambassador and shut down their own embassy in North Korea. That's how governments react. You don't go on this jamboree. What did they go and do? Who did they go and meet? Was it the killers on the road? Or was it the police that is investigating?
But the Nigerians, the Nigerian community seem to have welcomed their visits. This sort of like provided some kind of succor to them.
But that was all. That was quite emotional. That was all, and that is where it ends. I would think that Ike Ekweremadu, who led the delegation, as the Deputy Senate President, has the capacity and the power, even as an opposition leader in the House, to tell the Nigerian government in Abuja to do what they need to do. He had no reason, no business going to South Africa. Like I said, they just needed some time to go on holiday. Somebody just needed to take some fresh air, and they went to South Africa. They should tell us what they came back with. Has it stopped? No. It hasn't stopped anything. So I think that rather than jamboreeing up and down, they should put pressure on the government in Nigeria to do what is necessary to be done.
In the midst of all of this going on, one has not heard much at least I haven't heard much coming from the Nigerian Foreign Affairs Minister, Jeffrey Onyama, who should be engaging the South African
naturally, he should be
government
leading this particular fight. But
is
like I said,
is this beyond him? Is it beyond
it's
his
not.
office?
We will expect. But even if he didn't take action, that's what I was saying, that the Deputy Senate President should have at least moved the Senate to at least say, okay, we are withdrawing, we are calling back our High Commissioner in South Africa. But the Senate rejected it. And then they decided to go for a journey to South Africa. On a journey to South Africa, because I sincerely cannot say what they went there to do. It would have been better and more effective if the Senate had passed a resolution calling on the Nigerian government, specifically the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to withdraw the Nigerian High Commissioner in South Africa, even if it is for a moment, pending when the South African government can take steps that will assure us that our people in that country will no longer be attacked. It would have been more effective than that journey that I consider a very,
so
very
what do you make of the
jamboree.
statement from the South African government that the attacks were not xenophobic, but in response to rampant drugs and prostitution common in the vandalized areas? What do you make of that statement?
It's a very complicit statement and an escapist route for the inability of the South African government. As a matter of fact, not just for the inability, to justify the complicity of state actors in South Africa in this matter. If there is rampant criminality anywhere in the world, is there any portion of the South African law that says that mobs should go and attack people and loot their shops? I think that statement is an irresponsible statement, and it should be one of the grounds upon which Nigeria should insist that action should be taken by the South African government. They must provide evidence. In any case, we know, yes, there are several Nigerians in South African jails over drugs and other crimes, but we also have South Africans in Nigerian jails. The South Africans are not saints. We know that they are not saints, as a matter of fact. We cannot even tell the story of how we helped them out of apartheid, but at this particular point in time, over this issue, they should provide evidence in the South African law that says that even if somebody is a criminal, is there any part of the South African law that allows criminals, mobs, to go and break down their properties, kill them, and burn their shops?
And in the midst of all of this, you have 97 or so Nigerians repatriated from South Africa.
And
adding salt to the injury,
talk.
like
they can afford to talk. It's so annoying because our government is refusing to match action for action. And not violence, but I know that there are some diplomatic steps that this country can take that will hurt South Africa very, very badly. And our nation is refusing to take those actions. And some people are just talking about traveling to South Africa and coming back without anything in the bag. So I think I will continue to insist on this table this morning that Nigerians should direct all their anger towards our own government and insist that our government must make certain pronouncements that will force South Africa to do the right thing.
So is there anything at all left for Nigerians to do in protecting themselves, whether in South Africa or wherever else that such things may happen to them?
Well, in the meantime, if our government and the Republic of South Africa is not able to protect them, I see that they have formed themselves into community vigilantes and they are resorting to self-help. For me, that is the most basic thing you can do, self-preservation. You are not going to sit down and allow any hoodlum to come and attack your family in your house. If I were in the house with my family, I would rather die than allow some hoodlum. I would first of all be the first line of defense. You kill me before you attack my family, I would do that. And if that is what they must resort to, following the failure of the South African police, because with that statement, that irresponsible statement from the South African government, it is clear that, of course, that is a green light.
We're not hearing about compensation.
We are not hearing about compensation. We are not hearing about people that are going to be taken to court for committing this act. If they have to resort to those kind of community vigilantes to protect themselves, they should bond themselves together and see how they keep themselves safe. If they have to do that, then they have to do that, pending when the government can give them guarantees of safety.
All right, Agba Jalingo, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. Of course, it's still TVC Breakfast. There's a lot more to come. We'll be looking at the Supreme Court judges. Yes, where do you pick judges from? The appeals court, or is it from the bench or the bar, simply put?